Hello, this is Luke Stringer. Full disclosure on this video, I just recorded a video with my whole audience, and somewhere in the mix it got deleted. And so this is attempt number 2, and so I'm just going to explain the questions I asked to them and kind of what went down. So for my intro, I walked out to the Chicago Bulls '96 intro music, came out in the dark. It was really awesome. But then we're going to get into this. So the presentation today is what is love? And it's a look into love and how it affects lifelong relationships. And so what is love? Here is my visual presentation. See if we can get away with minimal ads this time around. So here what we learned from Mr. Hadaway is that love has the ability to hurt, and it has the ability to provide the opposite. And so there's 6 different kinds of love. In my previous presentation, I asked my participants, I said, what have we learned from Mr. Hadaway's video? And it was basically just that love can hurt. I think that's a good place to start. And so what are we learning today? In class, we're going to talk about love and what it is, definition of marriage, and then we're going to talk about how each kind of love plays into this context of marriage. And there's some separation between ideas there that we want to look at, but we'll get to that here in a little bit. So here are the 6 types of love with their situations and ends. So Eros is a physical, sexual attraction kind of love. It is very much a love at first sight scenario. You would get this maybe on bar hopping, or you see somebody that you just really think is beautiful, and it's very a surface level love, and typically leads to like one night stands if you participate in like a hookup culture. Is not going to be great in its end because it's so attached to some kind of infatuation that really relies on things that fade fairly quickly. So whether it be like a look or a certain attraction that can fall out of hand pretty quickly. Another type of love is mania. This is like a crazy type of love. This would be this would lead to like abusive relationships, or emotionally abusive, or very obsessive, or like an anxious lover, someone who has to hold on to their partner in order to get validation, and it's their only source of strength. And so these are very hard on both the person who's giving the love and the person who's receiving it, because the person who's giving the love is placing too much dependence on another person that cannot support that. They're not Jesus, so they just can't provide it. And then the person who's receiving it is under a constant duress, whether it be emotionally, physically, mentally, or spiritually, just a constant move away. And the issue here is that the situations usually end fairly roughly, whether it be a forced removal or something along the lines of that nature. They're usually pretty bad. Agape is a fatherly kind of love. It's from the Greek term agape for the love of God the Father to his children. And this is a very strong type of love that is not dependent on circumstance or emotion or any kind of recipient being, but rather just because the person has chosen to love the other person. And so the situations it's in is mostly familial. So like a mom and a dad would have an agape love towards their children, that no matter what they do, they're still going to love them in a good context. And these will intertwine, as we'll see in marriage, with other ones like pragma and storge. And these usually don't end. And their ends is that they usually don't. Storge is a friendly kind of love. So storge would be like the love that you have for your friends, that no matter what kind of goes on between you, you're still going to love each other because that's your friend, that's your person. I remember I was messing with those guys that were in there. That was my audience. Like, hey, I have storge love for y'all. That's the kind of love we have for each other, just as using it as an example. And they usually don't end barring great circumstances. Ludus is a very selfish kind of love. You would think of like someone who's only in a relationship to achieve something else for themselves, whether that be money or fame or power or influence, or because you're only in that relationship for something that they can give you. And so these typically don't end very well, because once the end moves away, the ludus disappears, because the love was based in, it was a means to an end, right? And so that leads us to the next one, is pragmatic, is pragma. And so pragma is like, let's give a scenario. So if you like meet somebody and you say, hey, I want to be friends with this person, see what they're like, see what they're about. And for 6 months, you're like, all right, I think this would be a good dating relationship. So you start dating them, and you see stuff that you would see in like your wife or your husband. And you would be, if you're a woman, and if you're, and so like, and then you'll start, then you're like, all right, I'm going to propose. Then you get married, and then you live this long life that's happy and it's good, because it was very pragmatic. So what you see in people that correspond to you. All right, this person is an early riser. I'm also an early riser. We can go up, and she likes running. I like running too, so we can run together. Very financially literate, knows how to work in their finances, things like that. And so the situations that involve these are usually very responsible and mindful people. And the effects of these relationships are very long lasting. These typically end up in the better of marriages. And so we'll talk about that here in a second. And I asked a question to the fellas. I said, what kind of love do you think you have? And they had a couple of variation of answers. I asked them to think about how that corresponds to their relationships in their life, and I connected it at the end. We'll talk about it in a second. Marriage. So definition of marriage here is a union between a man and a woman to join them together in a covenant relationship. And so why do people get married was a question I posed to them. One of them said babies. That was a comical moment, which is true in a lot of circumstances. A lot of circumstances is for procreation, is to produce offspring, because people want kids. In fact, that's a large thing that actually prevents people from getting married, is if they don't want kids. And so, which is totally up to you, whichever you pick. But there were a couple of different answers to that. And so now we moved on to the rest of them, to all the types of love and the effects of love on the marriage context and their outcomes based on the love. So the first one we're talking about is eros, the physical. The situation you would get married in this is like, you're like, all right, bet. This person is really attractive, so I'm going to marry them in 2 weeks. You get married, you go down to the Cayman Islands or something, and you have this honeymoon, and then you never grow. But the issue is that it's a very surface level relationship, so it never goes much deeper. So once that attraction fades away, once the infatuation is gone, there's no real structure to it, and so that really proves to be detrimental for many people in their marriages, and it is not a very good indicator in a relationship of what your marriage is going to look like success-wise. It's a good indicator that's not going to be very successful. That's what I mean. Mania is a crazy kind of love. These often end in very abusive contexts. And so these kind of loves would lead people to be, to like never talk to another person of another gender again. Like this can end up in physical abuse of like having to get like services out there to protect the husband or the wife from the other. It's just a very controlling and abusive relationship, and these usually do not end very well, and are usually very bad for both parties. Agape, the fatherly and familial love, usually produces excellent marriages, because the people who possess this love are very focused on the family and not themselves. They're very focused on, how can I provide for my family? How can I do well for my family? How can I love my kids? How can I love my wife? Or how can I love my husband? If you're a girl, and it's what can I do for others? What can I do for them? And so with this kind of family, this produces great, typically produces very good marriages, very lasting marriages, especially, and that even when things don't happen the way the other person thinks they should, it ends up being a good scenario because the love is not dependent on what any of them do. It's just dependent on who's giving the love, right? Storge, a friendly kind of love. This is more between friends, but I do think it's important here because it does. And I talked to a couple guys in there in the last video that said that they felt like they were dating their best friend. And I said that's really good, and that actually ties into pragma, which we'll talk about here in a second. But this produces very good marriages because when the love aspect, the infatuation aspect of it fails, you're still with your best friend. So these produce very good. So mostly they're between friends, but when paired with a marriage context, they are in a very good environment for success in a marriage context. Ludus is a very the selfish kind of love. And so these produce marriages oftentimes that are for some kind of gain. And once that gain is gone, the marriage is typically over. So think very young lady or young man who is looking to an older person of the prospective gender to provide money for them and once they die. And this is the same way with those old people who are looking for these young people for like sexual favors, or they're lonely, or just want to be with a younger person. And once the advantages end, in fact, there's a story about a prenuptial agreement that every 10 pounds the wife gained, there was like $100,000 she lost. It was something wild. But they just kind of proved the fact that both of them were only in this for before themselves. They were only in this for whatever the other could provide for them. These usually do not last or succeed to any degree because at some point everybody ends. At some point, what you were looking for is going to end. And so, that's the ludus kind of love. The pragma, the pragmatic kind of love, is tied in really, especially with storge and agape, in that this produces probably the best kind of love. So if there had to be 3 good and 3 bad, the 3 good would be pragma, storge, and agape, which would be like pragmatic, friendly, and then fatherly. And the bad would be ludus, mania, and eros. And these would be, which are selfish, crazy, and like physical. And I guess the eros isn't bad in and of itself, as in it, like if you have that for your wife and those things going on, or your husband, then those things go on and off. Like there's just going to be times and moments, but basing your love on that is unwise in a marriage context because it doesn't produce fruitfulness in a good marriage. But the pragmatic is the best indicator of if a marriage is going to succeed or not, because people in pragmatic relationships, they know what they're looking for in their partners, and they know what they're looking for in the time that they spend together. And so they are able to maybe not even necessarily plan the rest of their lives, but know what that's kind of going to look like with each other. And I think and that actually produces the best kinds of marriage, because it usually ties in heavily with storge and agape. So in conclusion, today in class, we learned what love is, baby don't hurt me, what marriage is, and how the two are mixed together in that particular context. And in there, I asked the guys that were in there, I made them call back to mind what their previous answers were and what kind of loves they were. And then I asked them to think about why they have that kind of love, like what are some examples. And then I asked them, maybe if it's a bad one, how can we change that? And if it's a good one, how can we supplement that? And so I kind of want to sit down. I know one guy said that he needs to stop gaslighting his girlfriend because it makes her think that she's crazy. And I do think that's quite comical. And another guy said that he said that he has storge with his girlfriend, and that he thought it would be a really good to continue on in that, and to kind of supplement whatever it needs to be done in order to maintain a good lasting friendship with the person that he's trying to date and marry. And so I'm sorry, this is my second video because the first one was really awesome. I even had some exit music in there, but thank you for listening, and I'll catch you later.